Hey friends, are you dealing with excessive context switching in your daily development tasks? Maybe spending too much time looking for that one code snippet that you lost in the chaos of your development workflow. You're not alone. Even if you do surface that snippet in your Notes app or you find it in Teams, do you remember the context behind it? Check out Pieces for Developers. We use this to manage development materials across your workflows. This is the tool that exists between your tools. Now, it seamlessly integrates with your IDE, with your browser, and with your collaboration tool like Slack or Teams. And it makes it easy to save and search, share and reference, and reuse code snippets throughout your work in progress journey. Now, my favorite feature is Pieces Copilot. This sets custom context with your personal code base, and you can ask it who you can contact for a particular issue. And it's completely on device. You can use this Copilot without an internet connection. Super cool. Check it out. Pieces.app/Scott. You can download the desktop application for free and start boosting your developer productivity today. Hi, I'm Scott Hansel, and this is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Danielle Boyer from steamconnection.org. They're on a mission to make technical education accessible for youth through the power of robotics. How are you?
Bonjour, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. How about you?
I am very well. So you said bonjour. I understand that you are a member of the Ojibwe peoples.
Yeah, I'm Ojibwe from the Sioux tribe, which is in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And currently I'm calling here from San Diego, California.
And Steam Connection is focused on education around robots, but I've heard you also refer to them as Indigenous cultural robots. And that's three words that I would not have put together before.
Yeah, my focus is on technical educational opportunities for Indigenous youths through robotics. So robots that solve a lot of problems in our communities, like language loss, like not having role models or representative STEM. So I design robots to help solve problems.
Is it weird for me as a non-Indigenous person to think to myself, Indigenous and robots? I don't put those two words together and think of them as being, words that go together.
It's funny because you actually sound like my grandma because she's native, right? But she said that too. She's like, I don't put these two things together. She's like, what do you mean like native robots? When I was first telling her about my ideas, she's like, you're crazy, like I have no clue what robots, huh? I remember bringing them over for the very first time for her to see them like drive around and stuff. And she's like, wait, what? This is crazy. Yeah, to me, I've always loved building robots. I've always loved creating things. And so I solve problems through kind of the lens of robots. Like some people, if they're into art, they're going to solve problems with art. If they're into, say, podcasts, they might communicate an idea through a podcast, right? For me, that is through robots. And one of the biggest problems that I'm solving is Indigenous language loss. My own language, which is Ojibwe-Moan, is actually considered to be endangered. There's just not a lot of resources or a lot of opportunities for us to be able to learn our languages. So I've been making robots for years. I've been distributing free technical educational resources for years. And at one point, my mentors and I were like, we're going to make a robot that teaches Indigenous languages and helps preserve recordings of our languages. And so, yeah, a lot of my work has been focused around building that out and creating cool robots to help preserve our ways.
When you say preserve your ways, I think that when people in the West are exposed to Native and Indigenous cultures, it is looking with a lens past both the painful past and also the traditional past. Where do you see the future and technology and robots fitting into the Native future?
Yeah, it's hard because when I talk about things like robots, when you said like, oh, I don't always put robots and natives together, like all those things, we're not often perceived in a very modern context. People often forget that we exist like here and now and that there's active nations making decisions about things, right? It's hard to communicate that. So it's hard to get to the point of being like, hey, like robots, yeah, people are like, wait a minute, I need to know all of this kind of behind the scenes. I need to know why you're doing it this way. Why? Well, it's interesting for me because I've always seen it as, it makes sense to me that robots and natives go good together because for us, like our peoples have always been inventors. We've always been scientists. We're the first inventors here on Turtle Island. So to me, teaching kids how to make robots, teaching kids about tech, it feels like kind of an extension of that. And it's just going along with 21st century technologies, and it's enabling our youth to do what they do best, and it's to create cool stuff.
I understand that there's concern amongst Indigenous culture of brain drain, where someone learns a thing and then moves to the city, and then that's the end of them and their relationship with their, with their past, with their family, with their culture. Do you think that these cultural robots could keep people with a foot in both worlds?
Yeah, I honestly, the reason I created the robot, I'll say the name of it. I realized I didn't give some context to it. Its name is Scobot. Sco is let's go in like reservation slang, short for like Skoden. Let's go then. And so we created a Scobot, which is a wearable language learning robot. Basically, it sits on your shoulder, it senses motion, and speaks Indigenous languages. We've been able to document like pieces of my language, other Indigenous languages. And it's designed for kids. Basically, the kids build it themselves, and it's used to supplement language learning already happening in the community. So it's not meant to be taken out of classrooms, out of homes to be used on its own. It's meant to supplement it. Because I think that one of the most important things in education is learning with your family, learning with your community. So the Scobots are like 3D printed robots. They take forever to 3D print. They're like little droids. Some people think they look like minions. That was not on purpose. They look slightly like minions, like very rezzed out minions. Yeah, the main goal with that is to bring our language resources to our youth, but also to advocate in the sense that like we're creating things now, we're creating solutions. We don't just exist in the past. Like this robot is an example to me of like Indigenous futures, That was a bit of context to the bot.
So when people leave the reservation, how does this robot not just make everyone an engineer and then they go and they move to Chicago and New York and that's it for them?
Yeah, honestly, that is a huge problem of losing community members who want to pursue school. In some communities, like the nearest university is hours and hours away. And it's really sad to see that loss and to see people leave and sometimes never come back. And so something that is important to me and something that is a big goal for my organization in the future is to create like technical learning centers and places to make robots and career opportunities for people in STEM and not have to leave their communities. So that's a goal I'm working on, but it's difficult to work around right now, especially with where universities are.
I've had folks on the show before talking about languages, talking about language loss, language preservation. Remind me your name of your own language. Is it Ojibwe-Moan?
My language is Ojibwe-Moan or Anishinaabe-Moan.
Okay. And the word is that by 2050, there'll be like less than a couple of dozen Indigenous languages if we don't keep teaching these languages.
Yeah, and when we lose our language, like we lose so much of our culture. This is how we communicate about like our ways to each other. This is how we pray. Like it's so important for us to have our languages and have access to that.
Now, you started this whole process years ago. I think it's been, half a decade now, probably. AI has risen in the last several years. Chatbots. Do you see an opportunity for an Ojibwe-Moan AI? Could you make the Scobots even smarter by having them be more conversational?
Yes. So right now we do have an intelligent version, but a lot of it is based off of like English. So basically what we're able to do is when we talk to the robot, you say like, hello, and then it recognizes hello, and then it knows hello means bonjour in Ojibwe, and it's able to say that back. But a lot of that is based upon like a language being written down and pretty well documented. And it's also based on like the English words that it's picking up on, because there's a lot more information there to pull from. It's harder to pick up on Ojibwe words and different dialects, different accents and things, because there's just not as much to pull from there, right? So right now that's very limited in its capacity. And so, I want to be able to use AI to help improve that out, but while keeping it privatized. I don't necessarily think that it's best for us to have like AI language learning tools for everyone to use.
Interesting. And that's an opportunity for those large language models or medium-sized language models that would have English and your language to run on the robot itself rather than running in the cloud somewhere and being running a big corporation. Like we can make these large language models and they can run on a small device so that you could literally have the entire culture on your shoulder theoretically with the computing power of the robot.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see the capabilities of the robot. We also have like an unintelligent version, which basically where it senses motion through a PIR sensor, and then it just starts playing like a pre-recorded track that we have kind of like written and designed for kids to hear, like "bonjour," hello, like say it back. And that's more of the model that we're using for places that don't have secure internet access or internet access at all. And yeah, that is the cheaper version. That's a lot easier to do.
And a PIR sensor is a passive
Yeah.
infrared sensor?
Yeah.
Interesting. So you have robots that scale, because I know that you also had a robot called Edgar that was...
I have a lot of robots.
You do? Yeah,
I do.
I've seen your TikTok, and I know that you don't just have the one robot. You've got your every kid gets a robot, Edgar.
So yeah, at my organization, the STEAM Connection, we are creating like a lot of robots. Our focus is providing like technical education that is culturally responsive. And so that takes the form of like many different kinds of robots. And one of them is Every Kid Gets a Robot, or ECHR, kind of like the worst acronym I've ever come up with. But it's a robot that costs less than $20 and is made out of recycled plastics, and it goes to kids for free. And basically, it teaches them everything from programming robots to wiring robots to assembling robots to additive manufacturing, all those things. And we give them all away for free and we've donated 11,000 of them so far.
One of the things that I thought was really cool also was that you acknowledged that for the most part, additive manufacturing or 3D printing uses a lot of plastic. And
it does.
Is it kind of incompatible with Indigenous beliefs that using a ton of plastic is probably not the best move? And you came up with a solution for that.
I would hope that would be everyone's beliefs, Like, I think it's kind of dangerous that I see a lot of like 3D printing mentality be like print, print, print without like thought as to where this is going once we're done with it, And I think it's a good thing to be able to use recycled plastic. You can melt filaments down and you can reuse them a lot of the time. And so I want to see that happen more. The consumerist mentality around 3D printing, it kind of concerns me, Yeah. I didn't want that in my robots. I wanted to make sure we were using good materials. And obviously that's during prototypes and other things, I can't always be using those materials, but we do for all of our sent out robots.
Yeah. I know that there's been a lot of discussion in the 3D printing community around PLA, that it's biodegradable, but it's still taken 15 years to break down, and there's questionable analysis around how biodegradable it is. So you've developed your own cardboard.
Yeah. Well, PLA, it's polylactic acid, right? And it is primarily made out of things like cornstarch. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, it's fully biodegradable. But what exactly does that mean? When people say biodegradable, what does it completely biodegrade? A lot of times it doesn't, And they've been able to do tests on, some different types of PLAs. And it's a very common like 3D printing plastic, right? And it's commonly used in other things as well. It doesn't biodegrade very well. But yeah, we use recycled PLA in the robots. And we also have like plant-based materials that we're using on some like beta models that we're working on, kind of like the mushroom cardboard that you see in some packaging. But yeah, we're working on scaling that out. We have a lot of projects in the works.
It sounds like you're doing a ton of stuff.
We're student-led, by the way. We're youth and student-led. And I'm 22, so it's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, you're 22 though, but to your credit, this is a recognized nonprofit. Folks can go to steamconnection.org. They can click donate. They are donating to a nonprofit. They can do matching funds through their company.
Yeah, they can.
This is tax deductible. Don't underestimate the 22-year-olds, I've always said.
Actually, it's crazy. One of my students who's 15, we just won another MIT Solve Award like this week. And it's led by one of my 15-year-old students, the project. She's making an app. And that's crazy. I'm like, damn, like, wow. Like, when I was 15, I wasn't doing that too. Like, so it just makes me happy.
That's really worth pointing out, actually, your relationship with MIT, because you can check out solve.mit.edu. They have these global challenge awards and people compete. And the 2023 Solver teams and awards have been announced. And you were also in an MIT documentary called The Big Idea recently. How did that come to pass?
I am an MIT Solve Indigenous Communities Fellow. I became the fellow when I was 20, which was honestly crazy. And we were able to recruit a lot of funding for Every Kid Gets a Robot through that. And at one point, they reached out and they were like basically casting for a documentary series on 3 women solving problems for our communities. And we filmed the documentary over like 2 years. And that was really surreal, honestly, because that's like most of my adulthood. Basically, it went from high school and then a little bit and then COVID and then documentary. It was a very weird shift, honestly, into now adulting and living on my own and all that stuff.
So this is like literally a documentary film crew just following you around for a couple of years.
Yeah, for 2 years.
That's so reality TV.
Yeah.
Are you not overthinking what you're going to say and what you're doing while there's these people with battery packs and lights next to you?
I'm definitely overthinking it because the thing is that I feel like there's a lot of viewers and different things hearing what I'm going to say who aren't native or who don't know a lot about our communities. And I want to use every opportunity I have to educate and to share, our views on things. But I feel like you have to say it the right way so that people understand what you're saying. And so, yeah, I'm definitely always in my head. Are people going to understand this? Is there context to this? All that stuff. It's so hard to do that for so long. You're like, oh my goodness, like, am I providing enough information here?
Today's episode is sponsored by Jam.dev. It's developer-friendly bug reports in 2 clicks. It's free and it's fabulous. You're a dev, you work on a team. Maybe your team sends you bug reports with no details. Maybe text, no screenshot, no console logs, and you end up going back and forth just to get the repro. That's when we introduce Jam.dev. It's a free tool that saves developers a ton of frustration. It'll force your teammates to make the perfect bug report. They literally can't do it wrong because it automatically includes a video of the bug, console logs, network requests, all the information you need, even their network speed. It's super easy to use. It works in Chrome. It works in Edge. They see a bug, they click a button, it makes a ticket, it saves time for them, and it'll save you a lot of hopping on calls and meetings to debug. If you're an engineer and you'd rather spend your time writing code than responding to comments, send your team jam.dev, and for the Hansel Minutes listener, take a look at jam.dev/Scott. Get started with your first year completely free. That's jam.dev/Scott. So when I'm exploring steamconnection.org, I'm seeing BioBots, I'm seeing Edgar, I'm seeing a robot called 20 that we can download open source and see the code and make ourselves. What can I or our listeners as non-Indigenous people do to both educate ourselves and support projects like this?
Yeah, I always encourage people to first learn whose land they're on. If they live in, North America, specifically, learn more about the Indigenous communities local to where they are. That's the first step of just which communities are close to you, which reservations are close to you, and kind of having that awareness. And then the next thing that if people are interested in supporting or learning more about the robots or things like that, you can go to www.steamconnection.org. You can learn more about how technology can be used to uplift Indigenous communities. You can support if you want. There's also links to other organizations doing really cool things like the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, which I always encourage people to volunteer or check out. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. There's also, I have a whole list of Indigenous books that people can check out as well, and they can start buying books from Native authors if they're interested.
So you mentioned before you are from the Ojibwe people and you are focused right now on maintaining your language. What if another person is listening and they're a member of an Indigenous group and they want to help and maybe they want to expand into their language? Can these robots be used or expanded to support other language preservation projects?
Yeah, if they're listening to this, they've probably already reached out
already
to
called
me.
You?
They've probably already called.
That's awesome.
I remember I was at a Comic-Con recently and I literally got followed into a room and surrounded by community members and they were like, hey, we want robots. And I was like, I was like, oh no, like these take a lot of time to make. I am severely backlogged, right? My entire organization, our entire focus is making robots, right? And like technical resources. Mm-hmm. That's my whole job. That's what I do every single day. And so when people come up to me and they're like, hey, like we want robots now. And I'm like, oh my God, like there's a year wait for robots.
So forgive my ignorance, but I've got a 3D printer. What about crowdsourcing? Do you want crowdsourcing from non-Indigenous people who have robots?
So we actually have a virtual learning platform called the Make a Robot platform that people can apply for, where they can download all of the STLs and files to make their own robots, all the links to buy everything themselves, all the instructions to assemble everything. and people can make robots themselves.
Okay, so I'm on Steam Connection right now, and I can see. Oh, I see the printing portal has a password. So how would we get involved?
Yeah, usually people just email or inquire about it, and then we provide more information.
Okay, cool. So then I could potentially make robots for the folks that are near me and make a group.
Yeah. We actually have done really cool crowdsourcing stuff before for Every Kid Gets a Robot. And there was, 250 robots in one go. And that was the biggest order I ever completed for UCLA. And they were distributing out to tribal schools and stuff in the area. We got everyone to 3D print and ship stuff within like 2 weeks. And it was like the coolest thing ever.
When you were in high school, you joined a robotics team, and you mentioned in interviews that you didn't feel like you fit in. Was it more that you were a young woman, or more that you were an Indigenous that made you feel like this was not the robotics team for you?
It was definitely being a woman. I was one of the only girls on the team, and there was a lot that added to the discrimination, but it was mostly gender-based issues. I'll backtrack it a little bit. I got started in my work because of my little sister, Bree. She was really interested in science and technology and all those things, but like couldn't afford the local opportunities that were around us. There was like a Lego class or a Lego Mindstorm stuff. It was hundreds of dollars to be able to buy a robot to participate in like the local programs. Out and about grocery shopping with my mom at Costco, I saw animal puppets like on the shelf. And I had the idea to teach like an animal science class for local kindergartners about like the animal puppets and like lessons about that. I just remember my mom taking me aside and being like, Danielle, you're 10. You're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? I was like, no. I'm like, I was very excited, right? I can theme snacks to the animals. I was like, this is going to be a huge hit, like we can do animal crackers for one thing. Like, I was so excited. I ended up teaching a semester-long kindergarten class at our local like homeschool group for 25 kindergartners over a semester. I was not very good at it at first. I remember giving kids like a ton of sugar and not realizing like I learned a lot of lessons, like through that. I was like, oh my gosh, 10 years old. But to me, that opened my eyes to education and inequities in education, and that there were things that I could do to solve problems, right? Like I could make resources that were free to the community instead of, it being hundreds and hundreds of dollars. When I got to public school, because I actually homeschooled most of my life, and when people tell me that they know or they've noticed, I'm like, no, like, please. I don't want people to notice, I guess.
Notice that you're homeschooled?
Yes, if people are like, oh, you seem that way, I'm like, oh, come on.
I think homeschooled kids get a bad rap, but I also think that one of the things that people go to school to learn how to learn, and homeschooled kids learn how to learn really fast.
I think that is if it's the ideally taught way.
Yeah, in a good situation.
In a good situation.
And you taught yourself YouTube videos, electrical engineering books, taking stuff apart. That's how I learned. Like, hey, how's this toaster work? Let's take apart the toaster. That's
I love taking apart things.
Yeah.
I've been a bit of a menace with that for a while. Once I got to post school, I joined a robotics team. It was a really big deal to be able to do that because it was expensive. We had to save up a lot. And once I got there, I was like one of the only girls. And it was very hostile, like sexual assault, being stalked with drones, internet stalking. I was followed places by the boys on the team. Like they would literally follow me to different schools and different things I was doing. And it was really scary and intimidating because that was my first kind of formal introduction to STEM, And I was so interested and eager to learn in that. And I got there and it was horrible. I remember like even telling my coach, I'm like, hey, like this is what's going on. I even had my parents sit in with me. The coach was like, that is sexual assault. This is insane. Like what's happening? And then nothing happened. No results ever came of that. And so I ended up quitting the team and joining another one at a nearby school. And it was pretty much the same thing all over again. Literally being a minor, getting hit on by coaches, getting hit on by mentors, just a very unsafe space for girls in STEM. And so to me, when I graduated, I was like, I want to make sure that STEM is one, affordable, but two, safe. My goodness, like it was so hostile for me in those spaces. And I'm like, I don't want anyone to have to experience that.
I'm very sorry that happened. When I read your story on both steamconnection.org and in your personal website, danielleboyer.org, you want to make it accessible for everyone. You make robots, you give them away. You have a great series of photo albums, and it's just girls nerding out. Everyone's just very happy, and it's just like page after page after page of a bunch of nerds nerding, and it is very heartening for me to take a look at.
I like that, nerds nerding. Yeah, I really wanted to make an environment where especially like Native girls have a space to be able to have role models in STEM, to be able to have access to educational opportunities that we wouldn't otherwise. And we serve everyone, but we do primarily focus on girls. And it is just so exciting to see like the kids blossom and create amazing inventions and projects and things like that. For me, I think the biggest push for my work was last year. I can't remember what school I was at, but I was at a school that serves primarily Indigenous children in Washington. One of the girls was part of the local robotics team. We were all building robots like after school on the gym floor or the cafeteria floor. Yeah. I was telling my experiences and stuff with the drones. And she was like, oh, wait, no, what? That's happened to me, too, from like the boys on my robotics team. They just do that and they're creepy and they're kind of looking at the girls weird. And I'm like, oh, I was hoping I was the only one who had experienced that, like to hear that a high schooler is telling you that they're getting stalked with drones on their robotics team. I was like, that is horrible. Like, we need to do better as a society in teaching children how to be responsible with technology and how not to harm others with that. To me, when I heard that, I was like, yeah, things need to change,
Right. And it validates that you're making a space after school for folks to not have those issues.
I didn't want to be validated in that way. I was hoping everything was, nice for all the kids, like that things have changed a bit from when I was younger, but there's so much progress that still needs to be made. And
yeah, very much agreed. Yeah. I mean, I was attempting to validate that you're making a space, but you're absolutely right. You shouldn't have to.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, but it is insane. Like, it's sad that in my mind, like, I don't even want things like charities to exist. Like, we shouldn't need these things, but it's sad that we do. And we have opportunity within that, but I do wish that we didn't need to.
Yeah, that's a great point. In a perfect world, you would join a robotics team. Everyone would hang out together. You'd make ones that were with an Indigenous spin, and the other kids on the team would think that was awesome, want to support you and help you, and they would be doing their robots on their spin, and everyone would be sharing parts, and it would be a great idea, and you would be building the future one robot at a time, which is what steamconnection.org is all about.
Yeah, for me, my focus is not necessarily in getting Indigenous students into technology careers. My goal is to enable our youth to be able to have the skills to solve the problems that they see around them and to create the change that they want to, whether that be developing an app, designing a robot, creating a website, things like that. Like being able to teach our youth important 21st century technology skills. And I think robots are the best way to do that. They're project-based. You have to complete the entire thing to get it to work, right? And so it teaches you a lot of STEM skills in the process. And to me, I want to see our youth thrive in these spaces, to thrive in science and thrive in math. And that I see is kind of the biggest step for us to be able to advocate for ourselves within technology and within STEM in general.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Danielle Boyer, for hanging out with me today and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. Miigwech.
You can learn more at steamconnection.org. They've reached over 800,000 use, and they've got tens of thousands of users that are making robots on their virtual learning platform.
34,000.
That's amazing. 34,000. You can also go to steamconnection.org and just click donate and donate fast to your favorite payment methods. It is tax deductible and a nonprofit. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.